channel, Cheese Me Mask, where I will keep you reporting daily on the entertainment world, the channel where you will learn about the lives of celebrities, scandals, couple, and much more. Your adjusted gross income will determine the amount of money you receive in a second stimulus check if the bill is passed. Here's how to calculate your AGI based on your tax filings. The U.S. House of Representatives and Senate will return from recess next week to hopefully continue negotiations over another coronavirus stimulus package and potentially on a second stimulus check for qualifying Americans after those talks ground to halt over the summer. Both sides said they want to explore more financial aid for Americans, and a Gallup poll released September 1st shows bipartisan support for another stimulus payment from 70% of the 5,000 people that were surveyed. Just like the first stimulus check that accompanied the CARES Act in March, the amount of money you will get under another stimulus act will be based on your adjusted gross income, or as tax preparer call it, AGI, from your 2019 federal tax filing. Some people may even get two IRS checks this year, even without another direct payment in 2020. The proposal was seen so far the Republicans-backed HEALS Act and Democratic Authority HEROES Act thought they could further both include the same stimulus check provision as the CARES Act did. There's up to 1,204 single filers and 75,000 a year, or 2,400 for joint filers who earn under 125,000 a year. While the Senate first plans to introduce a skinny coronavirus bill next week that does not include funding for a second stimulus payment, it could lead to other smaller bills that do not include that money. Here's what is an AGI, is how to find and how to can you use to estimate how much money you still receive from a second stimulus check, assuming a new bill passed. What is your AGI and why you need it? Your AGI is your adjusted gross income, a measure of income calculated from your total income to determine how much the government can tax you. Your gross income is the sum of all the money you earn in a year, including wages, dividends, alimony, capital gains, interest income, royalties, rental income, and retirement distributions. AGI factors in allowable deduction from gross income, like student loans, interest, alimony payments, or retirement contribution. To figure out how much your income tax has been calculated, your AGI is reported on your IRS tax form 1040. So it's a rough estimate of how much money you're bringing in after deductions from all your streams of income. The IRS uses AGI to calculate how much maximum of 1,200 stimulus check you can get. How to find your AGI if you filed taxes in 2019. If you file your tax return on 2019, pull out your printed records. If you use a tax filing software like TurboTax or H&R Block, you could be able to log in those accounts to find a copy of your tax return. You will find your AGI on the line 8B of the 2019 1040 federal tax form. How to find your AGI if you did not file taxes last year. If you didn't file tax last year in 2019, you can find your AGI on your 2018 tax return. On the 2018 1040 federal tax return, you will find the AGI on line 7. How to find your AGI if you don't have a copy of your tax return. If just you can find your tax return, you can use two ways to find your tax return. Method 1. Go to the IRS Get Transcript portal and choose Get Transcript online. You need your social security number, date of birth, filing status, and mailing address from the latest tax return. You also need access to your email address, your personal account number from a credit card, mortgage, or home equity loan, home equity line of a credit or car loan, and a mobile phone number with your name on your account. Once your identity is verified, select the tax return transcript and only use adjusted gross income line entry. You'll be able to view or print your information there. In method 2, if you don't have internet access or the necessary identity verification documents, you can use Get a Transcript portal and choose Get My Transcript by mail or call 1-800-908-9946 to request a tax return transcript. It takes about 5 to 10 business days to be delivered to you. How to use the AGI to figure out how much stimulus money you could get. Should the HEALS Act pass, how much money you get from a second stimulus check depends on your AGI, your filing status, and how many dependents you can. Check out your story on how to calculate much money you get from a second stimulus check from showing samples on how it could break down for depending on your situation. Single taxpayer with social security number and an AGI under $75,000. Single taxpayer with a social security number and an AGI under $75 will receive the full amount of $1,200. As your AGI goes up, the amount you're eligible to get decreases. If your AGI is $99,000 or above, you won't be eligible for the stimulus check. If you're filing as a head of the household, you get the full $1,200 check if your AGI is $112,500 or less. The amount will decrease until you reach the $146,500, at which point you are not eligible. If you're married couple filing jointly without children and your AGI is below $150,000, you'll get a $2,400 payment. The amount will decrease until you hit the $198,000, at which point you're not eligible for the check. The HEALS Act and the HEROES Act differ when it comes to child dependence. If the HEALS Act passes, you can expect to get $500 for each dependent. If the HEROES Act passes, you can expect to get $1,200 per dependent with a maximum of 3 dependents. Who counts as a dependent on your taxes, and how does that matter for a stimulus check? If a second stimulus check is approved, you might be eligible for some more money based on your dependents. In the first round of coronavirus stimulus checks sent out this spring, eligible American adults receive up to $1,200 through direct deposit, check of EIP debit card, along with an extra $500 for dependents under age 17. If one of those proposed new corona relief bills is passed, your dependents may count toward family total payment with some changes. But who exactly is a dependent? How are they tied to your tax return? And will they actually count toward a check? This is where things get tricky, and we're going to break this down for you, what you should know and how to find your answers. As for who would or wouldn't be eligible, that won't come until the House of Representatives and the Senate pass another stimulus package or a standalone bill that includes a second direct payment. Keep reading. Counts as a dependent according to the government. In the terms of tax law, a dependent can fall into 2 categories: a qualifying child or a qualifying relative. They don't need to be children or to be directly related to you, but they do have to meet the certain requirements from the IRS. To claim a qualifying child as your dependent or status, they must be either younger than 19 years old or be a student younger than 25 years old at the end of the calendar year. However, if your child is what the IRS call permanently and totally disabled, you can claim them as a dependent no matter their age. To claim a qualifying relative, be it a child or an adult, as a dependent, they must meet other criteria from the IRS. This might include an elderly relative who relies on you for your care. Even a dependent was claimed on your tax return, they may not be eligible to receive the money for the first round of stimulus check due to requirements of the CARES Act. However, it's likely that some requirements will change if another bill is passed. Where do I find how many dependents I have listed on my tax return? If you file a tax return in 2018 or later, you'll find your dependent listed on the Form 1040, U.S. Individual Income Tax Return. In the middle of the first page, you will see a box labeled Dependents. Your dependents, along with their social security numbers, relationship to you, and whether they qualify for child tax credit or credit for other dependents that were listed there. How much money could I get from my dependents if a second stimulus payment is approved? The first stimulus payment under the Bipartisan CARES Act passed in March included $500 for dependents at age 16 years and under. There was no limit for the number of children who count as a dependent, as long as they were 16 years or under and claimed by taxpayer on their tax return according to the tax foundation. Because another stimulus package has yet to be passed, and we don't know exactly how much money will be allotted to dependents under the Republican Bakes Heels Act, you get $500 per dependent, with no cap on the number of dependents who could receive that money. Under the Democratic Backed Heroes Act, you get $1,200 per dependent for up to 3 people. Both bills will provide this payment for dependents regardless of age, including college students and adult dependents, including potentially elder relatives who rely on you for care. The amount of money you will get in the second stimulus payment will depend on your adjusted gross income, which you can also find on your taxes. What if I have more dependents now I did on my last tax return? If your child was born or adopted into the family in 2020 and therefore not listed on your 2019 tax return that you filed this year, you claim them on your 2020 tax return to get a $500 dependent stimulus payment from the CARES Act sometime in 2021. This will likely be the case should a second stimulus check be approved as well. You can also find information on how to claim your child or another relative as your dependent on your taxes with the tool of IRS. How long or how does it work if I'm divorced or legally separated from a spouse sharing custody of dependent? A child can only be claimed as dependent from one taxpayer for a taxpayer. Typically, the child counts as dependent of the custodial parent. The parent who lives with the child for a longer period of time during that year. What if your spouse and I share child but file taxes separately? In this case, a child can only be claimed once as a dependent on one tax return. What happens if my dependent passes away? If the dependent was listed on your tax return because has since passed away, it's likely that you will still receive $500 and that they will be included in the second stimulus payment. However, the payment made someone who died before they receive it, it should be returned to the IRS. You cannot claim a stillborn child as a dependent according to the IRS. I invite you to subscribe to my channel, Chisme Más, turn on notification bell to receive notifications when I upload a new video, like, comment below, and share.